Hail Internet, it's Matt here for the Dork Lords. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We talk about all manner of dorkly things here, whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes. We probably have a playlist about it. Feel free to check us out. Today is another in our Dork Lord of the Rings series. And today, we're talking about two lesser-known characters from the First Age, who together undertake a journey that directly impacts two top-tier heroes and two kingdoms, and thus the outcome of the First Age. I'm talking about the elves Gelmir and Arminas, messengers sent with a dire warning to the elven kingdom of Nargothrond. Along this journey, they're going to meet and have words, some of them quite heated, with the human heroes Tuor and Tuor. So, let's get into it. For starters, who are these two elves? In the Silmarillion, we're told, quote, "They were of Angrad's people, but since the dagger Bragalach, they dwelt in the south with Kieran the shipwright." Angrad was one of the children of the Noldor king Finarfin, the other children being Agar, Finrod, and Galadriel, very illustrious crew. Now, Angrad and Agar jointly ruled Dorthonion in the First Age, and this is where Gelmir and Arminas almost certainly resided. However, geographically, Dorthonion was perilously close to Morgoth in Angband, and in the year 455 of the First Age, Dagger Bragalach, the Battle of the the Battle of Sudden Flame, routed the elves of Dorthonion. Angrad and Agar are both slain in battle, and those elves who survive, including Gelmir and Arminas, are forced to flee far to the south, taking refuge with Kieran. Within a few years, Kieran himself is forced to flee, and so by the time of this tale, our duo lives in Kieran's latest realm on the Isle of Balar. That means our duo fought in the Dagger Bragalach, and most likely in additional battles in the Wars of Beleriand. They are seasoned veterans. We also get this quote from their meeting with the hero Tuor. I'm going to talk more about that meeting in a second, but this quote gives us more of our duo's backstory. This is from Unfinished Tales. Tuor heard voices, and looking down he saw in amazement two elves that waded in the shallow water. And as they climbed up steps hewn in the bank, Tuor stood up and called to them. At once they drew their bright swords and sprang towards him. Then he saw that they were grey-cloaked, but mail-clad under, and he marveled, for they were fair and more fell to look upon, because of the light of their eyes, than any of the elven folk that he yet had known. That last line is very instructive. Our duo has a light in their eyes that makes them more fair and more fell to look upon than the other elves Tuor has seen. That reminds me of another quote, this one from the Silmarillion, describing one of the first battles in the Wars of Beleriand. King Feanor is ambushed by Morgoth's orcs, but the tables get turned pretty quickly, and the orcs are decimated because, as Tolkien writes, "The Noldor, outnumbered and taken at unawares, were yet swiftly victorious, for the light of Aman was not yet dimmed in their eyes." That same light in the eyes of our duo tells us that Gelmir and Arminas were alive in Aman, in the west, long before the First Age, before the light of the trees was extinguished. These two would have followed Angrad east across the treacherous icy Helcaraxe to Middle-earth. The Silmarillion notes, "Few of the deeds of the Noldor thereafter surpassed that desperate crossing in hardihood or woe." So by the time of the start of our tale, these two have personally experienced some major tragedies and hardships. One note on Gelmir. There are actually two Gelmirs named by Tolkien in the First Age. One of them is publicly tortured and beheaded by Morgoth's orcs, resulting in the aptly named Battle of Unnumbered Tears. This Gelmir is the other one, who, as far as I know, eventually sailed back to the west and lived happily ever after. So this is not the Gelmir who suffered arguably one of the worst fates described by Tolkien in the First Age. So that's a bit of backstory on our protagonists. Cut to the year 495 of the First Age. Just a reminder, this is thousands of years before the War of the Ring in the Third Age. In fact, all the locations I mention will be underwater by the Third Age. That said, The elf who will eventually be Master of the Grey Havens during the War of the Ring, Kieran, begins this first stage story. Kieran is visited by the Vala Ulmo, Lord of Waters. And when a member of the Valar speaks, it's best to listen. It makes sense that Ulmo would seek out Kieran. Kieran, the shipwright, has a strong tie to the sea all of his life, so it's no accident that Ulmo chooses him. Ulmo instructs Kieran to send a warning to the Elven King Orodreth in Nargothrond, saying, in essence, Morgoth's power was growing, and unless Nargothrond shut its doors and went into hiding, they would soon be discovered and destroyed. Kieran takes this news very seriously, as he should, and immediately appoints Gelmir and Arminas to deliver this message. However, Kieran then makes a choice that, on the surface, seems like a bad idea. This message obviously needs to get to Orodreth as soon as possible. So if you look on the map, the shortest route would be to follow the rivers north to Nargothrond. But Kieran puts our duo in a boat and sends them way out of the way to the Firth of Drengist, where they then journey inland south. There are a couple of possible reasons for this. One possibility is something we hear about when they finally meet up with Orodreth. They tell him that they've been spying on the enemy, noting the enemy's troop movements. So perhaps they were sent far to the north in order to collect intel before meeting with Orodreth. Sensible, in a way. However, do you need data to support the words of Ulmo? Seems a bit odd. The second possible reason involves their seemingly chance meeting with the hero Tuor, which only happened because our duo was traveling from the north. Christopher Tolkien writes about this in The Unfinished Tales. It is nowhere explained why Gelmir and Arminas, on an urgent errand to Nargothrond, were sent by Kieran all the length of the coast to the Firth of Drengist. Arminas said it was done for speed and secrecy, but greater secrecy could surely have been achieved by journeying up Narog from the south. It might be supposed that Kieran did this in obedience to Ulmo's command, so that they should meet Tuor in Dorloman and guide him through the gate of the Noldor. But this is nowhere suggested. So, Christopher Tolkien raises a great point. Even though it's apparently not overtly stated, he conjectures that perhaps Ulmo established the route the journey should take because he intended for our duo to run into Tuor. And that reasoning, I think, makes the most sense. Most notably because shortly after this particular tale, Ulmo himself will appear before Tuor and guide him on his way. So we get the idea that Ulmo is pulling the strings for much of this story. Now, our duo sails to the Firth of Drengist and begin their inland journey to Nargothrond. This is where we'll jump to their meeting with Tuor. If you're coming at this from the Lord of the Rings, there's not a lot mentioned in the trilogy about Tuor. He is Elrond's grandfather, and his son, Eärendil, Elrond's dad, is instrumental in saving Middle-earth from Morgoth in the First Age. At this point in Tuor's life, we're talking 495 of the First Age, he has escaped his Easterling captors after 3 years of imprisonment, and he's attempting to further escape the realm of Hithlum. The problem for him is that Hithlum's borders are marked by mountain ranges, but he's heard of a mythical gate that would lead him through the mountains to the realm of Nevrast. It's known as Anan in Gelith, the Gate of the Noldor. It was built by the Elven King Turgon many years earlier. As it happens, he's wandering the countryside searching for this hidden gate when he runs into Gelmir and Arminas. This is from Unfinished Tales. He stood to his full height and awaited them, but when they saw that he drew no weapon, but stood alone and greeted them in the elven tongue, they sheathed their swords and spoke courteously to him. And one said, Gelmir and Arminas we are, of Finarfin's people. Are you not one of the Edain of old that dwelt in these lands ere the Nirnaeth? And indeed, of the kindred of Hador and Hurin I deem you, for so the gold of your head declares you. And Tuor answered, Yea, I am Tuor, son of Huor, son of Galdor, son of Hador. And now at last I desire to leave this land where I am outlawed and kinless. Then, said Gelmir, if you would escape and find the havens in the south, already your feet have been guided on the right road. So I thought, said Tuor. For I followed a sudden spring of water in the hills, until it joined this treacherous stream. But now I know not whither to turn, for it has gone into darkness. Through darkness one may come to the light, said Gelmir. Yet one will walk under the sun while one may, said Tuor. But since you are of that people, tell me if you can, where lies the gate of the Noldor? For I have sought it long, ever since Anile, my foster-father of the Grey Elves, spoke of it to me. Then the elves laughed and said, Your search is ended, for we have ourselves just passed that gate. There it stands before you. And they pointed to the arch into which the water flowed. Come now, through darkness you shall come to the light. We will set your feet on the road, but we cannot guide you far, for we are sent back to the lands whence we fled upon an urgent errand. But fear not, said Gelmir. A great doom is written upon your brow, and it shall lead you far from these lands, far indeed from Middle-earth, as I guess. Then Tuor followed the Noldor down the steps, and waded in the cold water, until they passed into the shadow beyond the arch of stone. And then Gelmir brought forth one of those lamps for which the Noldor were renowned, for they were made of old in Valinor, and neither wind nor water could quench them. And when they were unhooded, they sent forth a clear blue light from a flame imprisoned in white crystal. A quick interjection here. These lamps are awesome. They were created by the greatest elven craftsmen of all time. That's right, they are Feanorian lamps. As the quote says, they were made in Valinor, and they contain an unquenchable blue flame trapped inside a white crystal. Thinking about when they were made, the battery life of these things is insane. And the idea of light trapped inside a crystalline structure sounds like similar technology to Feanor's Silmarils. It's a fun reference because we don't see a ton of magic items from Valinor, so it's always special when Tolkien mentions one. Alright, back to the story. Now by the light that Gelmir held above his head, Tuor saw that the river began to go suddenly down a smooth slope into a great tunnel. But beside its rock-hewn course, there ran long flights of steps leading on and downward into a deep gloom beyond the beam of the lamp. When they had come to the foot of the rapids, they stood under a great dome of rock, and there the river rushed over a steep fall with a great noise that echoed in the vault. And it passed then on again, beneath another arch into a further tunnel. Beside the falls the Noldor halted, and bade Tuor farewell. Now we must return and go our ways with all speed, said Gelmir, for matters of great peril are moving in Beleriand. Is then the hour come, when Turgon shall come forth? Said Tuor. Then the elves looked at him in amazement. That is a matter which concerns the Noldor rather than the sons of men, said Arminas. What know you of Turgon? Little, said Tuor, save that my father aided his escape from the Nirnaeth, and that in his hidden stronghold dwells the hope of the Noldor. Yet though I know not why, ever his name stirs in my heart and comes to my lips. And had I my will, I would go in search of him rather than tread this dark way of dread. Unless perhaps this secret road is the way to his dwelling? Who shall say, answered the elf, for since the dwelling of Turgon is hidden, so also are the ways thither. I know them not, though I have sought them long. Yet if I knew them, I would not reveal them to you, nor to any among men. But Gelmir said, Yet I have heard that your house has the favor of the Lord of Waters. And if his counsels lead you to Turgon, then surely shall you come to him, whithersoever you turn. Follow now the road to which the water has brought you from the hills, and fear not. You shall not walk long in darkness. Farewell, and think not that our meeting was by chance. For the dweller in the deep moves many things in this land still. Anar Kaluva Tielvana. That final phrase means, the sun shall shine upon your path. And there's a lot of foreshadowing baked into this dialogue. Gelmir calls it out. Think not that our meeting was by chance. He's essentially confirming the theory that Ulmo was responsible for putting them on this route. I love that Tuor is standing right in front of the gate. Like, where could this possibly be? Oh, right, 5 feet in front of me. They talk about Turgon and Gondolin, which is where Tuor's fate will lead him. And Gelmir says, A great doom is written upon your brow, and it shall lead you far from these lands, far indeed from Middle-earth, as I guess. Well, Gelmir is flashing some excellent prophetic skills because ultimately, Tuor successfully travels to the west. We get this quote from the Silmarillion. But in after days it was sung that Tuor alone of mortal men was numbered among the elder race, and was joined with the Noldor whom he loved, and his fate is sundered from the fate of men. But if you're asking me why Ulmo is so concerned with getting Tuor to Gondolin, it's because that's where he'll meet King Turgon's daughter Idril, and they will have a Yarendil. Gondolin gets destroyed, but Middle-earth ultimately gets saved. And none of that happens without this seemingly chance meeting between Tuor and our duo. So, now Gelmir and Arminas hurry to Nargothrond to complete their mission. Orodreth is currently the king of Nargothrond, and although his parentage shifts a bit in the lore over the years, his most canonically accepted father is Angrod, whom I mentioned earlier. And I think this suggests why Kieran selected our duo to deliver this message. Gelmir and Arminas served under Orodreth's father, Angrod. That would likely make their words easier to receive. As we'll see, though, there's an obstacle to their warning being heeded. That obstacle is Turin Turambar. Turin is currently residing in Nargothrond under an assumed name, Agar, and he has the ear of the king. This is from Unfinished Tales. In the spring, there came 2 elves, and they named themselves Gelmir and Arminas of the people of Finarfin, and said that they had an errand to the Lord of Nargothrond. They were brought before Turin, but Gelmir said, "It is to Orodreth that we would speak." And when Orodreth came, Gelmir said to him, "Lord, we were of Angrod's people, and we have wandered far since the Dagor Bragollach. But of late we have dwelt among Círdan's following by the mouths of Sirion. And on a day he called us, and bade us to go to you. For Ulmo himself, the Lord of Waters, had appeared to him and warned him of great peril that draws near to Nargothrond." "I need none to teach me that Nargothrond stands in peril," said Orodreth. "Be not angered, Lord," said Gelmir. "We have traversed Dorlomin and all the lands under the eaves of Ered Wethrin, and we have explored the pass of Sirion, spying out the ways of the enemy. There is a great gathering of orcs and evil creatures in those regions, and a host is mustering about Sauron's Isle." "I know it," said Turin. "Your news is stale. If the message of Kieran was to any purpose, it should have come sooner." "At least, Lord, you shall hear the message now," said Gelmir to Orodreth. "Hear then the words of the Lord of Waters. Thus he spoke to Kieran the shipwright. The evil of the north has defiled the springs of Sirion, and my power withdraws from the fingers of the flowing waters. But a worse thing is yet to come forth. Say therefore to the Lord of Nargothrond, shut the doors of the fortress, and go not abroad. Cast the stones of your pride into the loud river, that the creeping evil may not find the gate." Quick note, the worst thing yet to come forth is Glaurung, father of dragons. And when Gelmir says, "Cast the stones of your pride into the loud river," he's saying Orodreth should destroy the bridge he built, with Turin's encouragement, in order to openly attack Morgoth's forces. That bridge puts a GPS coordinate on Nargothrond. A heated argument is forthcoming. Back to the dialogue. This passage is a bit longer, but it's worth it. These words seemed dark to Orodreth, and he turned as he ever did to Turin for counsel. But Turin mistrusted the messengers, and he said in scorn, "What does Círdan know of our wars, who dwell nigh to the enemy? Let the mariner look to his ships. But if in truth the Lord of Waters would send us counsel, let him speak more plainly. For otherwise it will seem better to our case to muster our strength, and go boldly to meet our foes, ere they come too nigh." Then Gelmir bowed before Orodreth. Notice that Gelmir's been ignoring Turin, and said, "I have spoken as I was bidden, Lord," and he turned away. But Arminas said to Turin, "Are you indeed of the house of Hador, as I have heard said?" "Here I am named Agarwine, the Black Sword of Nargothrond," said Turin. "You deal much, it seems, in guarded speech, friend Arminas, and it is well that Turgon's secret is hid from you. or soon it would have been heard in Angband. A man's name is his own, and should the son of Hurin learn that you have betrayed him when he would be hid, then may Morgoth take you and burn out your tongue." Then Arminas was dismayed by the black wrath of Turin, but Gelmir said, "He shall not be betrayed by us, Agar. Are we not in council behind closed doors, where speech may be plainer? And Arminas asked this thing, I deem, because it is known to all that dwell by the sea that Ulmo has great love for the house of Hador, and some say that Hurin and Huor his brother came once into the hidden realm. If that were so, then he would speak of it to none, neither the great nor the less, and least of all to his son in childhood," answered Turin. "Therefore I do not believe that Arminas asked this of me in hope to learn aught of Turgon. I mistrust such messengers of mischief." "Save your mistrust," said Arminas in anger. "Gelmir mistakes me. I asked because I doubted what here seems believed. For little indeed do you resemble the kin of Hador, whatever your name." "And what do you know of them?" said Turin. "Hurin I have seen," answered Arminas, "and his fathers before him. And in the wastes of Dorlomin I met with Tuor, son of Huor, Hurin's brother. And he is like to his fathers, as you are not." "That may be," said Turin, "though of Tuor I have heard no word ere now. But if my head be dark and not golden, of that I am not ashamed. For I am not the first of sons in the likeness of his mother." "I spoke not of the difference between the black and the gold," said Arminas. "But others of the house of Hador bear themselves otherwise, and Tuor among them. For they use courtesy, and they listen to good counsel, holding the lords of the West in awe. But you, it seems, will take counsel with your own wisdom, or with your sword only, and you speak haughtily. And I say to you, Agarwine Mormagil, that if you do so, other shall be your doom than one of the houses of Hador and Beor might look for." "Other it has ever been," answered Turin. "And if, as it seems, I must bear the hate of Morgoth because of the valor of my father, shall I also endure the taunts and ill-boding of a runagate, though he claim the kinship of kings? I counsel you, get you back to the safe shores of the sea." Then Gelmir and Arminas departed, and went back to the south. But despite Turin's taunts, they would gladly have awaited battle beside their kin, and they went only because Kieran had bidden them under the command of Ulmo to bring back word to him of Nargothrond and of the speeding of their errand there. And Orodreth was much troubled by the words of the messengers, but all the more fell became the mood of Turin, and he would by no means listen to their counsels, and least of all would he suffer the great bridge to be cast down. For so much at least of the words of Ulmo were read aright. Some major insults being exchanged in that passage. "Little indeed do you resemble the kin of Hador, whatever your name." And Turin's body blow. "Shall I also endure the taunts and ill-boding of a runagate?" He's calling Arminas and Gelmir deserters to their faces for fleeing the Battle of Sudden Flame and heading south to Kieran. Gelmir tries to play diplomat, saying that Arminas meant no harm by his question, but Arminas comes back with, "Yeah, no, I meant actually that you're a jerk and you're a disgrace to your house." And so, as the quote states, the bridge does not come down. Shortly after, still in the year 495, Turin and Orodreth lead an army from Nargothrond against Glaurung at the Battle of Tumhalad. Orodreth is slain, the elves are routed, and Glaurung makes the sacked realm of Nargothrond his home for the next 5 years. Ulmo was right. How long would they have survived in secret? Unknown, but certainly longer than they did. It's interesting to see the contrast to how our duo is received by Tuor and Turin. And the eventual outcomes of these meetings are very different for both individuals. Yes, Gondolin is eventually destroyed 15 years later, but Tuor sails off to the west with his true love. Meanwhile, Turin does slay Glaurung, but ends up committing suicide after realizing he's married to his sister, who also commit suicide while pregnant with their child, so a slightly more tragic ending. Once Turin took up with Orodreth, Ulmo's warning never had a chance. Maybe it never had a chance anyway, because Orodreth was under the doom of Mandos, which spelled out bad times for the Noldor who journeyed east. But with Turin in play, you have to add in the curse of Morgoth. From the children of Hurin. But upon all whom you love, my thought shall weigh as a cloud of doom, and it shall bring them down into darkness and despair. Wherever they go, evil shall arise. Whenever they speak, their words shall bring ill counsel. I think that applies here. Whatsoever they do shall turn against them. They shall die without hope, cursing both life and death. So Ulmo's warning seems pointless, given its reception. But I think it's just because this is the convergence of 3 prophecies by 3 uber-powerful entities, Ulmo, Mandos, and Morgoth. And perhaps Ulmo was trying to just give Nargothrond a chance, however remote. But for Gelmir and Arminas, we get this intriguing quest and side quest, which put them in meaningful contact with some of the most notable figures of the First Age. Tuor, Turin, Orodreth, Kieran, and by extension, Ulmo. And the ripples formed by this quest reach all the way out to the Third Age and beyond. So, even though Gelmir and Arminas aren't exactly household names, they do deserve to be remembered for their deeds. Thanks for watching, everyone. And as our duo would say, Anar Kaluva Tiolvana.